one of four that were built. This is the last one flying. Basically, we just point the nose to the ground and then bring the throttles back.
One thing's for sure, that it's very clear to me that airplanes don't run on friendship.
Welcome to the Future in Flight podcast, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where that's not FUN on the floor, that's supposed to be there. I'm your host, Shawn Staerker. Today's episode is one of those where I genuinely don't know where to start, because every single story in it is awesome. We're kicking things off on the ramp at Sun and Fun, where our field reporter Brolin McKay walked up to what might be the strangest aircraft ever to fly under the American flag. It's called the Super Guppy. It's built from the bones of a Cold War-era tanker, powered by engines from a spy plane, and it carries hardware for the Artemis Moon Program. Oh, and its entire nose swings open on a single hinge. NASA owns it. There's only one left on Earth, and it was just sitting there on the ramp in Lakeland. Then, we're wheels up out of Sanford, November 464 Charlie Papa, heading east towards something most people only see from the Google Maps, the Shuttle Landing Facility at Kennedy Space Center. 15,000 feet of concrete built to catch a spacecraft with no engine and no second chances. And somewhere between the moon mission and the traffic pattern, we're going to talk about granola bars. Trust me, it connects. We're cleared direct. Let's go. Now, we're taking an in-depth look at one of the most unusual aircraft on planet Earth. It looks like someone took a perfectly good Boeing and then inflated it. It's called the Super Guppy, and if you've never heard of it, that's about to change. Our field reporter, Brolin McKay, was on assignment at Sun and Fun for Sun and Fun Radio, and when he spotted this thing on the ramp, he did what any self-respecting aviation nerd would do. He walked straight toward it. What he found was Greg, a member of the NASA crew that keeps this aircraft flying, and Greg had a story to tell.
So basically what we're seeing here is living history.
Living history is right. Here's the quick biography of this airplane. There were 4 Super Guppies ever built. The first 2 were American. The last 2, including this one, were constructed in France in 1987 by what was then the European aerospace industry, the organization that would eventually become Airbus. They were built to haul the oversized components of the Beluga, the wide-body European cargo aircraft, but NASA had its eye on them.
This is one of 4 that were built. This was built by the French back in 87, the last one. And NASA bought it from them, 97-ish, and we've been operating ever since. This is the last one flying.
One left. One. The last Super Guppy on Earth, flying. And it was right there in Lakeland. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about what makes this aircraft so visually extreme. The Super Guppy's nose doesn't just open like a door. It rotates. The entire front section, hinged at a single point, swings out to the side on an electric motor, allowing cargo to be loaded straight in from the front. Brolin spotted that right away.
We only have one hinge that's keeping this airplane together. It rotates on its front tire, correct?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, tell me about that.
Anything below 5 knots, we can open it whenever. And then obviously anything above 5, we have to have our left wing move to the wind, so obviously it knows that.
Now, here's where the story gets really interesting, because the Super Guppy isn't just a weird-looking aircraft. It's also a weird-built aircraft. The bones of this plane, the structural skeleton, come from a Boeing KC-97, a tanker transport that dates back to the early 1960s. The nose gear, borrowed from a 777, but installed backwards. The engines, turboprops from an E-3 Century, the military surveillance aircraft. The propellers, right off a C-130 Hercules. Greg called it exactly what it is.
So the bones of this are very older. So it's a very Frankenstein aircraft. What makes it difficult going through our TOs, because if I can't find it in one, I have to go to another one. So I've spent hours sometimes trying to find a certain drawing or find a certain drawing.
I want you to hold on to that detail because it speaks to something that doesn't get talked about enough in aviation. Maintenance isn't glamorous. It's not trending on social media, but it's the reason this 60-year-old skeleton is still airworthy. Every hour Greg spends hunting through technical manuals for a part that was designed for 3 different aircraft is an hour that keeps this mission alive. And speaking of the mission,
the rocket is on its own. 4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched.
The Super Guppy's cargo hold has a maximum payload of about 48,000 pounds. That's roughly 24 tons. To put it in perspective, that's about the weight of 4 full-grown African elephants. Or in this case, enough to carry the Artemis 1 capsule and its service module.
Our biggest thing is Artemis. We took it from Florida up to Mansfield, Ohio, so they can do testing. And that was long because it was like right at our limit of our payload capacity, which is only about 48,000 pounds. We took everything out of the aircraft, like our toolboxes, even us mechanics.
They took everything out, the toolboxes, the mechanics, every unnecessary pound stripped from the aircraft so it could carry a piece of the Moon Program north to Ohio. Brolin caught that detail and followed it somewhere good.
So you were a part of the moon mission.
The Super Guppy also carries astronauts in a different sense. Not in it, but their hardware, their vehicles, their mission-critical equipment. Victor Glover, NASA astronaut and Artemis 2 crew member, comes through Greg's world on a regular basis.
Victor Glover, he goes through El Paso a lot. I mean, all of those astronauts fly into Long Beach a lot because SpaceX is out there. Our astronauts, they engage with SpaceX. They're very familiar.
Artemis gets the headlines, but the Super Guppy's day-to-day work is more varied than you might think. V-22 Ospreys, the tilt-rotor aircraft used by the Marines and Special Operations Forces, are built partly in Amarillo, Texas, and partly in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Getting those partially assembled aircraft from one plant to the other is a logistics puzzle that, until recently, had only one solution: the Super Guppy.
Ospreys before.
Oh, Ospreys.
Because one of their plants is in Amarillo, and then we fly it to Philadelphia, and this is actually the only option they had. So we actually moved about, I think it was about
22 or 23 Ospreys. And that Amarillo connection had a personal twist for Brolin, who grew up there and told Greg his mom used to watch the Guppy fly in and out, wondering what on earth it was carrying. The answer, it turns out, was the aircraft that would eventually protect the people she watched on the news. The Super Guppy also moves components for Boeing and has hauled wing sections out of Wichita, Kansas for Spirit Aerosystems. It's government and aerospace use only. Greg was clear that this isn't a charter service, but within that lane, its purpose is singular. When something is too big, too fragile, or too mission critical to go any other way, this is the airplane you call. Let's talk about flying this thing, because if the maintenance side is complicated, the pilot side is something else entirely. The Super Guppy has no hydraulic assist on its flight controls. None. The yoke connects the control surfaces through cables, the old-fashioned way. In an aircraft this enormous and this top-heavy, that means the pilots are physically fighting the airplane every time they're in the pattern. Landing, especially, requires a technique that sounds more like controlled falling than aeronautics.
Basically, we just point the nose in the ground and then bring the throttle back. I would say 50% of the time the nose hits first and then the main. So, because if you flare, you're going to hit your tail. So it's a little nerve-wracking coming in, and I've seen this thing humble many of good pilots.
Humble many good pilots. That's a sentence I want every aspiring aviator listening to tattoo somewhere they'll remember it. This is a certified, maintained, flying government aircraft, and it routinely makes experienced aviators work hard just to get it on the ground. Brolin, who flies in Texas, knew exactly what Greg was describing.
If the wind isn't blowing, then something's wrong. We do have a 12,000-foot runway on 04. And you also have to worry about crosswind direction once you're on the ground, right?
Yeah, so it definitely makes them
The Super Guppy almost didn't make it to Sun and Fun. For a stretch of years, the program went quiet. Funding dried up. The aircraft sat. And if there's one thing an airplane hates, it's sitting.
We did lose funding there for a while, so we didn't fly it for maybe a year. And then they finally gave us money. Because usually we get like a sponsor, like say Artemis. Artemis says, hey, the Artemis Program, says, hey, here's $2 million, and we say, hey, that gives you like $4 million. But now we're finally getting money again, so we're back to flying and getting it back out there to show people, hey, this thing's still here, we can still use it, we're still looking for work, that type of thing. So we definitely want to keep it fun.
They want to keep it going. One airplane, one crew, one mission that connects Cold War-era Boeing bones, French engineering, NASA ambition, and a nose that opens into the wind. Brolin wrapped his time on the ramp the way any good reporter does, with the thing that struck him most.
One thing's for sure, that it's very clear to me that airplanes don't run on friendship, especially this airplane. And airplanes hate sitting, so I'm glad that we're at least getting.
The NASA Super Guppy, built in France, powered by engines from a spy plane, flying on bones from the 1960s, carrying the hardware of human spaceflight to wherever it needs to go next. If you're ever at an air show and you see something on the ramp that looks like it swallowed another airplane, go find it, walk up to it, ask the crew about it. Because behind every aircraft that looks impossible is a group of people who decided it wasn't. And that is exactly the kind of future we're flying toward. Coming up next, we take a trip from Lakeland over to the east coast of Florida and visit the Shuttle Landing Facility and future in flight destinations. AviNation USA is the leading youth aviation magazine with a mission to attract, educate, and empower youth in aviation, sharing inspiring stories, industry news, and real student journeys from all corners of the flight world. Their Rising Star program spotlights young pilots, mechanics, engineers, and aviation dreamers who are making moves and celebrating their achievements with industry support, gear, and recognition. No matter what your goal, AviNation is a resource, a community, and a launchpad for your aviation dreams. Head to avinationusa.com to subscribe, get involved, or nominate a Rising Star today. Welcome into Destinations, the segment where we strap in, punch the throttle, and go find the kinds of places that make you remember exactly why you fell in love with flying in the first place. Today, we're wheels up from the southeast ramp at Sanford Airport, KSFB, in a slick little Vans RV-9A belonging to Level Aviation. She's registered November 464 Charlie Papa, and she's instantly recognizable. With me is Ricardo Leon, Sales and Marketing Director for Level Aviation, a guy for whom a love of aviation and travel is literally in his blood. We're headed to KTTS, the Space Florida Launch and Landing Facility. You might know it by another name, the Shuttle Landing Facility. Most people driving to this place sit in traffic for 45 minutes just to get through the front gate. We're going to fly right over all of it. Ricardo pushed the throttle forward on runway 9 or right, and within seconds, the Florida landscape opened up below us like a map someone had just unfolded on a table. This is one of the things I love about flying in Central Florida. You get altitude fast, and when you do, the geography tells you a story. Almost immediately after departure, you can see the East Coast glinting on the horizon. From here, it's only about 40 miles to the beach, and from 2,500 feet, it feels a lot closer. Beneath us, the St. Johns River and the Econ-Lockhatchee, locals call it the Econ, wind through miles and miles of grass marsh and palmetto flatland, stretching from Sanford all the way out to Titusville. If you've never thought about Central Florida as wild country, this view changes that. We track east, and pretty soon we're crossing over Lake Harney, a quiet, gorgeous stretch of water that's famous among crappie fishermen. Probably more John boats out there than bass boats today, but from 2,500 feet it just looks like a mirror dropped into the middle of a scrub. Then the Indian River appears, and just past it Merritt Island, and beyond that the Atlantic, catching the late morning sun. And right there, in the middle of it all, you start to see it, the shape you'd recognize anywhere, a runway. But not just any runway. This one is long, longer than most. We pulled up the NOTAMs before we left. No TFRs posted for the day, so I dialed in 128.55 and gave the tower a call. Now, here's something that surprised me the first time I heard it. The controllers at KTTS? On most days, they're thrilled to talk to you. The operational tempo out there can be, let's call it, relaxed. It's not O'Hare. It's not even KSFB on a Tuesday morning. Most days, general aviation pilots coming through for a visit are genuinely welcome. The controller we reached was friendly, professional, and completely at ease. And here's the part where most pilots get the thing they came for.
Commander Kevin Kriegel is now flying Columbia.
15,000 feet of concrete. Let that settle in for a second. The Shuttle Landing Facility runway, runway 15/33, is one of the longest runways on the planet. It's 15,000 feet long and 300 feet wide. That's nearly 3 miles of engineered, grooved, high-friction concrete, laid down specifically so that a 240,000-pound spacecraft gliding with no engine power, no second chances, no go-arounds, could scrub off speed and stop safely.
Now flying around the imaginary heading alignment circle. This is a 230-degree turn, setting up for final approach to runway 33.
It was first used for an actual shuttle landing on February 11, 1984, when Challenger's STS-41-B mission returned from orbit and touched down right here at its launch site for the first time in the program's history. Before that, shuttles had to land all the way out at Edwards Air Force Base in California. The runway surface was designed with so much friction that engineers actually had to go back and grind it down. The original grooves were too grippy for the rubber on the shuttle's tires. They were chewing tires up on landing. Think about that engineering problem for a second. Your runway is too good.
Welcome home, Columbia. Excellent landing.
And here's my personal favorite detail about KTTS. Ready for this one? The locals have a nickname for this runway, the Gator Tanning Facility, because at any given time, some of the roughly 4,000 alligators living within Kennedy Space Center's boundaries can be found just hanging out on the runway, sunbathing, completely unbothered by the fact that they're lying on a surface designed for spacecraft. When NASA says they manage wildlife hazards at this facility, they're not joking. On most days, if you've done your homework and called ahead, the controllers will clear you for a low approach staying west of the center line. Pilots have been known to get clearances as low as 100 feet AGL, 100 feet, cruising down 3 miles of runway with the vehicle assembly building in the distance to the southeast, and the historic launch complexes dotting the horizon all around you. Some pilots call it one of the most profound experiences in all of general aviation. We were not those pilots, not today at least. When we called the tower, we got a very polite and very reasonable explanation. Drone testing was underway. We were welcome to observe from our current altitude, which was gracious, but the low approach was a no-go. We maintained altitude and heading, crossed east toward the coast, and watched the testing from above. Honestly, still worth it. The view of the launch complex from that altitude, with the VAB on the horizon and the Atlantic beyond it, there are just few words to describe it. If you were a kid who ever watched a shuttle launch on TV and thought, I want to be a part of that somehow, this view is your answer. We turned north and picked up the Mosquito Lagoon, a long, shallow stretch of water that runs along Florida's east coast, part of the Indian River Lagoon system. It's a genuinely beautiful stretch of coastline. We tracked up past Oak Hill, past Edgewater, and then New Smyrna Beach came into view, a town that manages to be charming and laid back in a way that seems almost defiant, given everything that's happening around it. We turned west, flew just south of Spruce Creek, a legendary fly-in community that's worth its own Destinations episode someday, and tracked back towards Sanford. The whole round trip had taken us maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and we'd flown over the St. Johns River, crossed the Indian River, circled one of the most historically significant pieces of concrete in American history, and watched a drone test from above an active NASA facility. Not bad. Ricardo greased it onto 9 right at KSFB. We taxied back to the hangar and shut down. He looked as satisfied with the flight as I was. Okay, here's your practical briefing, because this is absolutely a destination you can put in your flight plan. KTTS operates generally Monday through Friday, roughly 0800 to 1700. Tower is on 128.55. Before we go anywhere near that airspace, you're checking NOTAMs, not glancing at them, checking them. Range status, TFRs, active operations. This is Kennedy Space Center. Things happen there that close airspace fast. When you're ready to call, give him your position, altitude, and your request. Be precise, be professional, and be patient. If you're cleared, expect an altitude restriction, commonly 500 feet, but sometimes as low as 100 feet AGL. You fly the approach, maintain your cleared altitude over the runway, and keep going. Do not touch down. You follow departure instructions, usually a straight out, followed by a turn west or north to exit. And if you're not cleared, like us that day, you say thank you, maintain your altitude, and still get one of the most spectacular views in Florida aviation. Either way, it's a win.
Main gear touchdown. Deploying the drag chute. Nose gear touchdown. Atlantis rolling out on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center, wrapping up a 5.3 million mile.
The Shuttle Landing Facility was built to bring spacecraft home, built to catch the most complex flying machines humanity had ever engineered, descending without engines, trusting physics and training, and 15,000 feet of groove concrete. And now, on a quiet Tuesday morning, you and a friend can go fly over it, call up a friendly tower controller, and if the day is right, cruise just west of centerline at 100 feet, looking up at the VAB, thinking about every mission that ever ended right here. That is what aviation gives you. Access to places and moments that no other mode of transportation even comes close to. Plan your flight, check your NOTAMs, call the tower with confidence, and go find your runway. Up next, we're going to dive into the history of one of the most popular in-flight snacks on the market. Before we get into the next story, I want to ask you something. What's in your flight bag right now? Maybe a tablet, sectional charts, your logbook, probably your headset. And somewhere in the bottom of that bag, there's almost certainly a granola bar, wrapped in crinkly plastic, maybe slightly smushed, possibly from 3 months ago. That granola bar has been with you on every flight lesson. It was there when you soloed. It was there when you failed a check ride. It has been loyal in a way that very few things in aviation are. But here's the thing. That granola bar has a history. A weird history. A history involving a 19th century health spa, a cereal war, a hippie revival, and one guy in California who looked at a pile of loose oats and thought, what if I just squished it? This is that story. We go back to 1863. Civil War is happening. Abraham Lincoln is president. And in Dansville, New York, a man named Dr. James Caleb Jackson is running a health resort called Our Home on the Hillside. Dr. Jackson was a health reformer who believed that what you ate was directly tied to how well you felt. It was a revolutionary idea for the time. His guests came to recover from all kinds of ailments, and he fed them accordingly. One of his creations was a food he called granola. It was made from gram flour, a whole wheat flour considered very virtuous in the 1860s, baked into dense, dry biscuits, then broken into small chunks and baked again. The result was not exactly a crowd pleaser. You had to soak it in milk overnight just to make it chewable. But Jackson believed in it, and honestly, the core idea was solid, dense, nutritious, long shelf life, something you could prepare, store, and take with you. Sound familiar? Fast forward about a decade. John Harvey Kellogg, yeah, that Kellogg, the cereal Kellogg, was running his own health sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. He was also a health reformer, and he'd heard about Dr. Jackson's granola. So Kellogg made his own version, lighter, more palatable, and he called it granola. Jackson sued. Kellogg changed the name by one letter, granola. And that is how the word was born, from a trademark dispute between two 19th century health spa operators, which is honestly the most American origin story possible. Granola didn't really take off for another 100 years. The 1960s happened, the counterculture happened, and suddenly a generation of young Americans were looking for food that felt real, unprocessed, natural, close to the earth. Granola fit perfectly. A man named Leighton Gentry is credited with the modern version of granola we recognize today. Oat-based, sweetened, baked until crunchy. It became a symbol of a whole movement. Farmers markets, natural food co-ops, hiking trails. The word granola actually became slang. If someone called you granola or crunchy granola, they meant you were earthy, back to nature, and probably had strong opinions about the environment, man. Which, fair enough. The aviation connection here is real, by the way. Backpackers and hikers have been relying on calorie-dense, shelf-stable trail foods for decades. Granola was lightweight, packed with energy, and didn't need refrigeration. The same properties that made it great for a 3-day backpacking trip would eventually make it perfect for a 3-hour flight lesson. Now, loose granola is great, but it's also kind of messy. You need a bowl. You need milk or yogurt. You can't exactly dig into a bag of loose granola while flying a traffic pattern or sitting in a jump seat. So sometime in the early 1970s, someone had a genius idea. What if we just pressed it into a rectangle? A man named Stanley Mason is widely credited with the granola bar format, pressing loose granola into a compact, portable, holdable shape. There's also some credit given to Edward Thayer Sr. out of Chico, California, who actually patented and manufactured the first commercial granola bar in the U.S. The details are a little fuzzy, as they often are when something gets invented around the same time by multiple people, which happens in aviation history, by the way. But the result was clear, a shelf-stable, calorie-dense, portable snack that you could throw in a bag and eat with one hand. Hikers noticed, kids noticed, pilots noticed, and by the late 70s and into the 80s, granola bars were everywhere. So what is actually in a granola bar? The classics: rolled oats, nuts, seeds, a sweetener, usually honey or maple syrup, and a binder to hold it all together. Nut butter works great. From there, the variations are endless. Chocolate chip, peanut butter, berry, almond, protein packed, vegan, gluten-free, chewy, crunchy. Now here's a fun fact. In the UK and Ireland, granola bars are called flapjacks. In Australia and New Zealand, they're muesli bars. Same snack, completely different vocabulary. If you're ever at an international fly-in and a British pilot offers you a flapjack, they're not talking about a pancake. Accept graciously. Nutritionally, granola bars are legitimately solid pilot fuel, fiber for sustained energy, healthy fats, protein, no refrigeration needed, quick to eat in the cockpit. The catch, and there always is one, is sugar content. Some commercial granola bars have as much sugar as a candy bar. So if you're building a flight bag snack strategy, flip it over and read the label. Look for whole ingredients, minimal added sugar, and you're good to go. So here's the thing I keep coming back to. Dr. James Caleb Jackson in 1863 was trying to solve a problem. How do you give people concentrated nutrition in a self-stable, portable form? That's the same problem you're solving when you stuff something in your flight bag before an early morning lesson. The form has changed. The ingredients have evolved, but the underlying idea, take good fuel, make it portable, keep it simple, that's never changed. And somehow, the humble granola bar has survived 160 years of food trends, dietary movements, trademark lawsuits, and the entire commercial snack food industry, and it's still here. That's kind of inspiring. So the next time you're looking for a great in-flight snack, think about the granola bar. What a great show today. A 60-year-old airplane built from spare parts, kept flying by one crew that refuses to let it sit. A runway built for something that had never been done before, that you can still fly over if you do your homework and make the call. And a snack that a 19th century doctor invented to solve a simple problem. Give people good fuel, make it portable, keep it simple, and it's been in flight bags for decades. The thread running through all of this is the same one that runs through everything we do on this show. People who decided something mattered and kept showing up for it. Greg and his crew, the controllers at KTTS who were genuinely happy to hear from a general aviation pilot. Dr. Jackson in 1863, who just wanted to make something useful. That's the future we're flying toward, and you're a part of it. If today's episode meant something to you, here's the best thing you can do. hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now so you never miss a show. And if you've got 2 minutes, leave us a review. It helps other aviation enthusiasts find the show, and every single one of those reviews matters to us more than you know. Until next time, we'll see you out there and up there.